Hello, I'm Bonnie Johnson, Marketing and Communications Manager with AgCareers. The agricultural industry today relies on talent from diverse backgrounds like engineering, marketing, IT, skilled trades, and more. Employers are expanding their candidate pools by placing more emphasis on practical skills and demonstrated abilities rather than traditional credentials. As a result, recruiting is shifting towards skills-based hiring and investing in capabilities employees will need for the future. Candidates may not have an ag-based education or ag-based work experience. While many professionals bring strong technical skills, they may lack that foundational agricultural knowledge needed to succeed. In fact, agriculture employers report that their biggest hiring challenge is finding candidates with the right skills and experience. As roles and technologies evolve, ongoing training is essential to compete. Agriculture employers are investing in training and development to build those practical skills, support employee growth, strengthen the workplace culture, and recruit and retain top talent. AgCareers is proud to partner with Grounded in Ag to bring you the exclusive Ag Onboarding Academy, an efficient, cost-effective training tool. Learning farming and agriculture can be daunting to those who didn't grow up in production agriculture. This course is designed to build that foundational knowledge and confidence for employees entering the ag industry or for existing employees that may need that training and development. The Ag Onboarding Academy allows you to bring the agricultural industry essentials to your new hires in a convenient online digital training program. Rather than relying solely on internal orientation, employers can supplement onboarding with agriculture-focused training backed by AgCareers' experience in talent attraction, HR insights, career education, and industry workforce development. We're excited to bring you the Ag Onboarding Academy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Janice Person, and I'm the founder of Grounded in Ag. We're really excited to be working with AgCareers on this new set of courses called the Ag Onboarding Academy. I was new to agriculture when I was in college. I was studying journalism, and I got a job at a magazine, and I didn't really know the vocabulary. I didn't really know anything about farmers. Didn't know anything about the crops that I was going to cover. And then throughout my career, I've hired various people, some of whom were by far the best qualified. They just didn't know agriculture. And it's always been challenging. How do you bring people up to speed on some of the things that we hold so dear in agriculture, our culture, the way our businesses work, the importance of science? Those are not things that everybody automatically gets. And so what Grounded in Ag is a platform to help fill that gap, help people better understand farmers, the way business works. And ultimately, we go down to individual commodities. But for this Ag Onboarding Academy, what we're doing is we're offering some special packages, but we'll get into that. This free preview has, as you'll see here, we're on the intro page for the course, the free preview course. And you're going to see over on the left, there are a couple of different options, different lessons that you can look at. Now, one of those is going to be really an introduction into what is in the foundational courses that are being sold as part of the Ag Onboarding Academy. And the other piece is really what is part of those the focus on crops or livestock. We want to make sure that's really clear to you, so we're putting it here inside a course. The other is there's a lesson on what did people get wrong. It's something that we've recorded as we did lots of experts. As we recorded these lessons, we asked them, as somebody who works with a lot of people, what have you seen go wrong? We want people taking Grounded in Ag and the Ag Onboarding Academy to learn from the mistakes of others rather than having to make them. So those things are right there. You can see it in the left. Let me show you sort of what one lesson looks like. And after we do that, I'll come back and tell you a little something else. The lessons are always going to be set up the same. The navigation between the lessons are same. You're just going to have different courses that you might have available to you. All right, so then down below the video, which is really the most prominent piece for everybody, you're going to see how long that video is. There's a download for this video, so you can click on that and get the download ready for yourself. And then you see what's going on topic-wise. You see the vocabulary that's happening here, and you look at some of the data and information, as well as some follow-up resources. Now, before we go on to the lessons that you want to see, I want to mention these can be done in a couple of different ways. We've had individual employees run them, and one of the pieces that we looked at quickly was called putting that to work. But I want to tell you how that can fit into both working as an individual or doing this in groups, whether that's a leadership team, a new class of employees, a group of interns that you've just hired, whatever it is. You can do this individually or in those groups. And this putting it to work document really helps facilitate that. As you go through our courses, we're going to ask you various questions and the quizzes and things like that. But putting it to work really helps you match up what you're learning here in a pre-commercial state and being able to then go back to people in your organization and find out what is strategically important for you. Is there a specific group of farmers that you really need to focus in on? Is there a specific set of production practices? Is equipment something you need to know more about? All of those things come to play in this program, and we're really excited to be able to show you how it works and hope you start onboarding some of your folks into ag. With the Ag Onboarding Academy, there are a few different options that you can consider. One is the foundational course. That's kind of the prerequisite for everything else. So that's one that we anticipate everyone participating in this will buy. It is the first 6.5 hours or so of courses and two primary courses. One is Ag 101, and there are two big sections to that. One is getting to know farmers, and the other is getting to know the business of agriculture. Those are two different things for a good reason. One, farmers are absolutely independent, and we have some cool things that we do as we get to know farmers. We have 8 different farmers from around the country, different crops, different livestock, and they each tell you different pieces of things. We talk about the demographics of agriculture, we talk about their communities, and we're going to start with a lesson from that as we do this demo. And we'll get to know some of the experts that really lead the lessons for Grounded in Ag, which I think are what makes us who we are. So in this first one, I'm going to show you the family farm similarities and differences. This is about an hour-long video, and we're just going to show you a small snippet of it, but it'll give you a feel for how you get to know these farmers and how, as you do more and more of these lessons, you're learning the cultural piece, the business piece, and some of the science as you go along. And it feels really conversational with various people with various backgrounds, and you're beginning to learn a lot about farming.
But my parents were always like, they had a retirement plan, which if you get involved in agriculture very far, you'll find that a lot of farmers don't. We talk a lot about generational transfer because there are a lot of the older generation that just want to hang on to it till the day they die. I know that I'm really privileged that my parents were not that way. So yeah, transferring it's unique to every farm and every family on how you want to do it. But yeah, it's a process. It's a long process. I've been back on the farm for since 2011, and we started transferring the farm to me in 2012. So it's been a 12-year process, and we're getting to the end of it, but we're still not there. So yeah, I have a unique outlook on it. And even now, like, I'm only 36, almost 37, and my husband and I are even starting to say, okay, like, what is our plan? How are we going to start doing this too? We have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And so we figure in about 10 years, we will probably have a pretty good idea as to whether one of our girls wants to come back too.
So I'm one of 3 siblings. My father was the only child. His father before him farmed a little bit, but it was mostly that 4th generation that was really farming. My dad was farming since he was 18. So, he grew up in it. He wanted to do it. It was always his life. We were raised differently. We were given a choice. My 2 younger brothers, they want nothing to do with the farm. And at one point, I didn't either. I grew up working part-time on the farm, but as a whether it be 12 years old or 20 years old, I'm making minimum wage, and it's just a part-time job for me. I didn't see an end as far as how am I supposed to make a living? And, I see all these, farming is one of those things. I mean, a lot of times you see farmers, you're like, well, look at that money. I mean, that is a big, that's a statement that a lot of people make of farmers. You think of farmers, you think of money. And, but that's not necessarily the case. If you're not in the industry, you don't understand, the way budgets and money works and how it can change from year to year, and how flexible you can be, but also how hard some years can be, between, this day and the next. Started working on my own, doing odds and end jobs for the first 3 or 4 or 5 years out of college, and happenstance kind of happened, and I got back into it because my dad needed help, and it seemed like at one point or another, whether it was now or in 20 years, one of us as siblings was going to have to take over at some point, because obviously, I mean, it was going to be passed down one way or another. And my dad never pressured us. Neither one of our parents ever pressured us to make that decision one way or another. It was purely do what you want to do. We'll support you no matter what. It's here if you change your mind. And but for us, I was luckily that I have the resources. So I've worked for my father for the last 6-7 years full time, but I also, working with him, I've been able to pick up my own land so that we farm. So our farm is together, but it's separate. So I have my own 500 acres that I farm under Mootsy Farms, which is my farm name, and then we farm the other 2,000 acres under his. But we do it, But I have his equipment. I have benefits so that I don't have to put all the money into everything necessary to be able to farm a crop in a given year. I do have the luxury of having help.
The next section is Business of Agriculture. This is also part of the Ag 101 course. And this really gets into more cash flow, mental health, pesticides, equipment, all those kind of things that go into the business of agriculture. Who do you buy things from? Because a lot of the things that you might want, you're not going to be able to get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. And so we want to talk through a lot of those pieces. Industry associations, all of those come in together as the business of agriculture. And one of those lessons is what people get wrong when they get in ag. And as I mentioned earlier, that's going to be a full lesson where you can see it in its entirety. Now that you've got a feel for some of that, we'll move on to a conversation about equipment.
The basic equipment for row crop farming, like we do corn and soybeans, you gotta have a couple of tractors, bigger tractors for us. You need a planter to plant the seeds. We don't do any tillage, but we do have a couple tillage tools just in case. So you gotta prepare that seed bed, and you may or may not have a sprayer. We don't own a sprayer. We hire all that out to retailers to take care of your crops during the season. And then you've got various kinds of harvest equipment. You've got the combine, which you can put different heads on the front of for the different crops. We got one for corn and one for beans and a little bit of wheat we do. And you've got to have trucks to haul it all out of the field.
And just like in the other lessons, when you scroll down below the videos, there's another downloadable. And when you pull that download up, it just helps you remember some of the things that were discussed in the lesson.
And here at the end of this module, we have that putting it to work document I mentioned. The kind of information that you can take back to a manager, a peer. If you want to have it as a discussion group, have it with a larger group of people where maybe you bring in experts from different parts of your organization and have those discussions. Let's move on to sustainability. Sustainability is one of the things that draws a lot of people to agriculture. I know for me, it was really key in getting me into the business. I've always had an interest for the earth and science, and really thought the idea of soil health and clean water were the kinds of things where I can make a difference in the world. And that's what agriculture does all the time. But how does it really work? So we pulled together a panel of farmers, and we're going to show you a clip here of one of the farmers who was in the discussion about wildlife and pollinators. And he talks about our friendly honeybees. This is Don Cameron.
We rely on pollinators on farm for many of the crops that we grow here. We do have almonds, so we are part of the honeybee population that gets moved into the state. And without that, we really wouldn't have a crop. There are pollinators that are native here, but over the years, they've been diminished. You know, you talk about working with other groups. We have also worked with some of the main ones with Xerces, NRCS, but we've also started dialogue with some of our buyers that know the importance of having a bee population in our region, a native bee population.
What we did with this program on sustainability specifically, though, is we also went out to see the farmers where they live. And so this is a little bit of that farm tour that Don Cameron gave us.
That it's just amazing to see you build it become really amazing. And you know, the other idea behind our pollinator habitat that we put in is we've got something blooming every month out of the year. So we know that the native bees that are out here will continue to propagate and be happy pretty much out here all year round. Native pollinator hedgerows to attract native pollinators. Many of the crops we grow here require pollination for either seed production or some of the actual crop production that we have, like the almonds in particular. And so we thought it was a good idea. So we started with a small grant that we got from the California state government through CDFA. It was a healthy soils grant. So it involved carbon sequestration along with pollinator habitat on the farm. We were supposed to put in a half mile, and we ended up putting a mile in with that first planting. And we have since added a lot more habitat here. We now have 8 miles of native pollinator habitat or hedgerow. And it does two things for us. One, we get a lot of local bees, native bees that frequent here. But it also prevents erosion along these banks that we have here. This is actually a levee for the Kings River. And we used to have a tremendous amount of erosion from either we'd get a heavy rain, it would just cut right through the sand and create a lot of issues for us. So we've come in here, we've put in this last 5 miles has really been sponsored by the Nestle company. we grow certain crops that they end up buying, so they wanted to be a part of it. We've also added some chips for mulch. Some of the walnut orchards that we've taken out are almond orchards. We can't burn any of that, so we have to chip it and incorporate the majority of it back into the ground for carbon sequestration.
So those lessons in Ag 101 and sustainability, they include livestock and crops and really show how all of that comes together in agriculture. It really is a good fit together, and many farmers and ranchers are doing both crops and livestock. But there are some things you might want to know about crops more specifically, and that's where the focus on crops course comes in, or the focus on livestock course comes in. And we have a different certification for each of those. Let me show you a little bit more about the crops.
And you can see there on the left in the navigation, all the different lessons and the different quizzes right there. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the one on 2 different takes on buying seed.
I typically get things that are hybridized because they are made beneficial for us, so we're not wasting money. We're not putting money into the soil and then nothing will grow because we don't have the right selection for drought or super hot weather, which we can have in Chicago as well, or super rainy weather, which we can also have in Chicago. So every single season, we go through something different. This last season was a drought. The year before that was rain. We had monsoon weather for years.
We farm a lot of various soil types, so we have some really top-end, deep, black soils that are 3 or 4 feet deep, that it doesn't matter what you do, it's going to raise a good crop. And then you've got clay, more of a clay-based soil, which is a lot tighter. It's not as easy to work with. It's more drought or prone to drought and doesn't drain as well. Then we have ashy soils that are super light, that'll dry out if you don't keep them covered up. And so they all get managed a little different. When it comes to buying seed, I look for some drought tolerance with the way the weather patterns are anymore. I also look for disease resistance, because we don't necessarily plan on using a fungicide every year if we don't have to, so we kind of look for that in the genetics. And then obviously maturity for where we're at, a lot of it's around 110-day corn. And we kind of get some help from our dealer in as far as what products get put on top end soil, what products perform well on your tougher ground or have more flexibility, that type of things.
That's part of our basics on crops. It really is helping you get to know what you need to know about growing crops and raising food, all those great things. But there's something else that happens in agriculture, and that is deep challenges: weeds, insects, and disease pressure. Now, Carl Bradley actually walks us through some of his plots to explain what that looks like. He is a plant pathologist at the University of Kentucky, and he also sat down with us inside to kind of give us a look at what happens and why diseases really matter.
All plants are vulnerable to attack by plant pathogens. And so when I'm talking about plant pathogens, I work a lot with fungi. That's probably the biggest group of pathogens that affect plants, but there's also viruses, there's also bacteria, there's also nematodes, which in soybean, the soybean cyst nematode is the most important pathogen. So there are different types of pathogens that can cause diseases on plants, and all plants are vulnerable, even your grass that you have at your house or the house plants inside your house. So I work on soybean here and wheat because these are both really important crops in the area that I'm in Western Kentucky and really throughout Kentucky and the states around me. So these are all very big, kind of big acre crops where they're They're vulnerable to diseases just like any other plant might be. When I was in North Dakota, I worked on a lot of different crops. North Dakota is very diverse in their agriculture. So I worked on soybean. That's about the only one that was in common now. In addition to that, I worked on dry edible beans, some of the pulse crops, which are things like lentils and chickpeas. I worked a little bit on sugar beet, sunflower, flax, did a lot of work with canola while I was there. So I don't even know if I can even name all the crops I used to work on there, but very diverse agriculture in North Dakota. And so it was kind of a unique experience to learn not just about different crops, but about some of the different pathogens that can cause diseases on these crops as well.
Now you can see from that, we're getting pretty deep into crops, right? It's going to be the same for livestock. We're going to do 2 different modules within that course. The first one looks at some of the day-to-day things like managing feed. Here we've got an example of one of those lessons, Daniel Hayden, who has both chickens and beef. And so he explains a little bit of why one is raised indoors and one is raised outdoors.
A cow will normally be processed when they're 20 to 24 months of age, and a chicken will be processed when they're 46 days old. And the way that we raise them is totally different as well. From the chickens, we raise them in a completely controlled environment, from the humidity, which we monitor inside these houses, which are behind me, to water consumption, airflow. Doesn't matter what time of the year it is. When I get chickens, it's 94 degrees inside these chicken houses, even though it may be the dead of winter outside. Vice versa of our cattle, they're made for the outdoors. They're not made for the indoors. You cannot provide a sustainable condition in an indoor process from start to finish on a cow-calf operation and them maintain their health and well-being near as well as what a chicken can do. And that's why I mean from the cattle side being totally different from the chicken side. You have one chicken that is 6.5 pounds when it's fully grown and processed, and you have a cow that's 1,600 pounds when it's fully grown and processed.
And as we continue getting deeper into livestock, animal care is something I think everybody cares about, whether you are in agriculture or not. And it is certainly a topic that a lot of farmers and ranchers take time to think about, act on, and learn more about. There's always more to learn. So in this section, we have a couple of lessons. One is from the animal handling and stress expert, Temple Grandin, and the other is from a veterinarian who works with us. She's out of Indiana, and I'd love for you to see how Mary Beth looks at things.
We work our cows a couple of times a year. So the big, most important thing that we do for them every year is in the spring. We run them through our alleyways and our chute system, and we give them all of their annual vaccines. We put fly tags in their ear to protect them from the flies out in the pasture. That helps keep them pest-free, helps keep them less itchy, and actually the biggest thing is it protects their eyes. When the fly tags are up in their ears right here, the big thing is it keeps the flies away from their face, and there's lots of flies that can really irritate their eyes, which can cause a lot of issues for the cattle. So that's one of the big, most important things that we do for them. And then we also do a topical deworming. So think like the topical flea and tick stuff that you drip on the back of your cat's neck or the back of your dog's neck. It's just like that, but it's a lot more of it. So we actually do a pour on all down their back, and that helps to get, we don't so much worry about fleas and ticks in cattle, but we do worry about intestinal parasites, and that will help to deal with the intestinal parasites and keep them happy and healthy. Some other things that farmers need to keep in mind with their livestock herds throughout the year. It's going to be a little different based on what type of animals they have and how they're keeping them, right? Even for dairy cows versus beef cows. Dairy cows, for the most part, are going to live inside, whereas beef cows, for the most part, are going to live outside. So I need to worry about different things in the wintertime with my dairy cows versus my beef cows.
All right, that gives you a pretty good idea of what's built into these courses. You do have the option to go on and watch the, what did people get wrong lesson in its entirety. That also includes its downloadables. On this one, we're going to put a downloadable about all the different lessons that are in each of these courses so that you can look at it, study it, those kind of things, really get a good feel for what you're talking about here. I should mention that you can also get this in an app on your phone. So if you're like me and you like to listen to podcasts or things like that when you're driving, you can stream it live or you can access it from the Grounded in Ag website. There you're going to see your library and you'll be able to see which courses as a participant you have access to.